A few years ago, I was hiking along the Continental Divide Trail in the Anaconda Pintlers through a burn area. I saw a blackened CDT sign and smiled, impressed that it was still there and proud of myself for spotting it. And then I headed off down the wrong trail. A few minutes later, I checked the GPS and sure enough, I had completely missed a junction. It was only when I backtracked to that charred CDT sign that I saw the blaze marking the trail and finally looked down and saw the sign lying on the ground. So there were actually two signs and a blaze to mark the trail, but I still missed it. After thousands of miles of backpacking, I've learned that losing the trail is surprisingly easy to do. Today, I want to show you what works when that happens and how to find your way back on track. The dangerous part isn't losing the trail, it's what happens next. You think it's over there, so you head that way, then you change your mind and head off in a different direction somewhere else. Before long, you've made 3 or 4 turns, and now you're much further from the trail than when you started. The first tip is the most important one. When I lose the trail, I follow 3 clear steps: stop, backtrack, and look for evidence. Instead of charging forward, back up until you find the last place where the trail was really clear. It's usually only 10 or 15 paces back, and once you return to that spot, look around for evidence of where the trail should be. Many times, it's obvious at that point what went wrong. It might be that there was a sharp turn and you went straight instead. Or it might be that there were 2 trails, but one is actually a game trail and you followed that instead of the main one. So first tip, backtrack to where the trail was clear and look for evidence of where it should be. What do I mean by evidence of the trail? Well, here's a list of things to look for. First, check for blazes on trees.
Sometimes those can be hard to find, but here's one old blaze, and you can see how it's got a mark up top and then a long slash, sort of a dot and a dash, or you might think of it as a upside down exclamation point. And that's important to look for both of those because trees can naturally cause a formation that looks like the bottom part of that. When they have a disease or an injury of some kind, they can heal over and it looks like the slash part, but there's nothing in nature that makes the dot and the slash. And if you can't find blazes, another good thing to look for is cut off logs like that. Again, nothing in nature makes a flat cut off log like that, and so somebody's been through here years ago to clear the trail, and usually that cut log points right to the trail because they'll cut on either side and then roll that out of the way. So there's another one. Another thing to look for is there's kind of a corridor of trees that doesn't occur naturally. Usually you won't see much of a straight line like that in the woods. There's going to be meanderings and trees in the way. If you're looking around for where to go, especially if there's snow covering the trail, so you can't go by that, a nice column of trees like that is a good thing to look for. There you can see the trail leading up to that little ford. But as soon as I stepped across the creek, there doesn't seem to be any sign of it. So your best bet in that situation is to scan the far side of the meadow, looking for places where the trail enters back into the woods. And if nothing else, shoot for the straightest shot across the meadow. Now here, you can see that the trail does pick up again, and it's fairly easy to see once you get in line with it. It's hard when you're looking across, but when you get in line with it, then it becomes pretty clear.
Although it's a less common method of indicating where the trail is, another thing to look for is trail markers.
Here's an example of a trail marker, just a piece of metal nailed to the tree, usually with bright colors. A lot of times those will be up high, as this one is probably about 10 or 12 feet off the ground. And that's because these tend to be used more on trails that are frequented in the winter. So if you are hiking or snowshoeing on 3 or 4 feet of snow, then that's going to be more at eye level.
You can also look for rock cairns, which frequently mark the trail in places where there is no other way of doing so, like where the trail goes over bare rock. Now, cairns are a bit controversial. Some folks have started building them just for fun in random places, and that's not okay. Certainly not in keeping with the leave no trace philosophy. But cairns that are marking trails should be left alone, as they can be critical to survival in some harsh places, like a high mountain pass that might be snow-covered most of the year. River crossings are often opportunities for losing the trail. When I was doing my epic trip across the Bob Marshall Wilderness, I got in some trouble after crossing the middle fork of the Flathead, and I searched and searched for where the trail picked up on the other side.
Well, this is just crazy. I've crossed the river and can't find the dang trail on the other side. GPS says I'm right on it, so that's not helping this time. I think the smartest thing to do is just to go crashing back through the weeds to the river again and walk along the shore and see if I can pick it up. Well, after half an hour of thrashing around in the woods, I finally came back to the spot where I crossed to search again. Finally, I see it, taken off at an angle down low. Crazy. My GPS was useless on this one. Now that I'm right on the trail, the GPS says that I'm way off of it, which is the problem with GPS.
A GPS can be very helpful in finding the trail, but maybe not in the obvious way that you might think. At best, it only locates you within about 10 or 15 feet, and in heavy tree cover, it can be as bad as 30 feet, which is a long distance when bushwhacking in thick forest. Although it might not work to pinpoint the trail, it does do a good job of telling you the line of the trail, so a better use of GPS is just to find that line and then move perpendicular to it. That way I will either intersect the trail or be clearly moving away from it so I can turn around and try the opposite direction. As you're doing this, it works better to be looking off in the distance instead of at your feet, because the trail usually leaps out when you do finally line up with it. Another trick you might try is to think like a trail builder. And by that I mean, ask yourself, if I was building the trail through here, where would I put it? In the Wind River Range, I was caught in a heavy downpour rain and was hustling down the trail as fast as I could, and then came to a ford. Now, the river was all washed out on both sides, so it wasn't clear where the trail was supposed to go on the other side. I crossed over, and there was a clear path where a lot of people had trampled down some tall grass, so I headed off in that direction. Well, I figured out that wasn't the right way when I came pretty quickly to a cliff, and I realized it was time to backtrack. I went back to that place where I had first crossed the river and took a careful look around, and then I saw that there was a clear bench about 30 feet up. I scrambled up to that bench, and sure enough, that's where the trail was. So just take a few minutes to ask yourself, where should the trail be, and then look for it there. The last tip I'm a little hesitant to share because it's a worst case scenario concept. 99% of the time, if you follow the tips that we've already talked about, you're going to find the trail with not too much trouble. But what about that rare situation where you searched all around and you're just completely lost? How are you going to get back home? Well, there's a great simple rule that you can use in that situation, and it is always follow water downhill. Streams join to form rivers. Rivers lead to larger drainages and eventually civilization. Before committing to that strategy, though, consider the terrain and your map. Some drainages can become impassable due to waterfalls or steep canyons. Also, it can be a little tricky to bushwhack through the woods, and the brush is always the thickest close to the streams, so you don't want to try to walk right next to the watercourse. But if you hold back, 20 or 30 yards from the stream and keep following that, it will eventually get you back to where you need to be. Also, most trails do follow the watercourse because, in terms of the terrain, that is usually the easiest path for the trail to follow too. So a lot of times after maybe a quarter mile or so of bushwhacking, you can stumble back onto the trail. Be sure to check the GPS here or your map to verify that you're on the same side of the stream as where the trail is supposed to be. So in that situation, it's usually not an emergency, it's just an annoying time suck. And if you're persistent and determined, you can get back on track. But there is a huge caveat on this tip, and I really want to stress this point. If you doubt your ability to bushwhack and route find through thick forest, and you are truly lost, you would be better off staying put. Search and rescue are amazing, talented people. I really honor them for the work that they do, but it's 100 times harder to locate someone who is thrashing around and moving versus stationary. So find a clearing of some kind and spread out any bright gear or clothing you might have to be visible from the air, which is why I bought a quilt with red fabric on the outside. That's for signaling if I'm injured and can't self-rescue. So be honest with yourself about your abilities and stay in one place if that's the smarter choice for you. These are just some ideas that I have come up with, and I'm guessing that as you're listening to this, you probably have come up with some other ideas that you would like to share. So please take a minute to do that in the comments section, and then we will all benefit from the combined wisdom of this community. Okay, thanks for watching. Thanks so much for subscribing. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Take care.